You want to start, Shelley?
Yeah, I can start. Just to let you know, this is a workshop that me and Marie have done in the past, but we've always been in the same room. So we may have a little glitches because this is the first time we've tried to do this as a webinar. So, and we want your feedback, so please use the chat feature because we really want to hear from you. I'm going to give you a little history about me. I'm actually an adult student. I went back numerous years ago to start the education I didn't get the first time around. In that process of getting the education, I got involved with We Learn, wrote for Women's Perspective, and now I'm actually will have my associate's degree in February of this year. So
Yay!
It's been a slow road, but We Learn has helped me learn how to write, and that's the biggest key that I have found with college. You have to be able to write, you put your thoughts from your head onto paper. So this is what we're hoping that this workshop will do, is either if you're a student or a teacher, give you tools to how to get that information from your head onto the paper. Marie?
Yeah, if we can go to the second slide. I am a teacher and a learning disability specialist in San Diego. One of the biggest areas that I have found that students struggle with is writing, and so it just to get them started, it's just really hard to start, and just because your teacher said, oh, now you have to write, isn't that much motivation, and it's a very scary thing for many people. And so I started finding competitions online and competitions in the area where people could write for a prize or for something else. And so we started getting involved with that, and that's when I found We Learn, because they publish every year, we publish a journal of writing by learners. And the call for writing is about to come out. Every year we have a different theme. This year is messages. The journal is called Women's Perspectives, but it really is everyone's perspectives, and I've had both female students and male students published and write about these topics, and we just thought that the messages this year would be a really good topic. The call for writing also comes with pre-writing activities and a few pages of curriculum for teachers to use or for students to use as kicking boards. But I really think that what's valuable is those authentic writing opportunities for students, because it just boosts the motivation level and the relevance to students instead of just writing something. And it's just amazing what people come up with when they're looking into their heart. Then the second thing that happened to me was that once the students' writing got published, I had 2 students here in San Diego who just started bugging me, because when they got their letter from We Learn saying they were going to be published, it also said that they could read their writing at the We Learn conference. So at this time, We Learn has a conference every other year, and it's been in Boston, it's been in Rhode Island. And so I was here in San Diego with, in an adult school and going, well, I'm sorry I can't take you. But the San Diego Council on Literacy actually gave us the money, and every year, every conference, I've been lucky enough to take students. And it's just made such a difference to the student performance in the classroom, and all the other students who get to hear about the travel and the meeting and talking about their experience at the conference. And I think this this workshop is just typical of what we do at WeLearn, and that is students are equal with faculty, with researchers, because we're all adults and we all have the same perspective, and it's just helping students be able to write about it and become more academic and attached to academic topics. So do you have anything else to say, Shelley?
No, other than being published really is a confidence booster for students. That is, there's no way to describe that boost that a student gets just because they're so ashamed of their writing in the past. To be published because they wrote something really is a good, just really good morale booster.
The journal is also juried, so just because you send it in, there's a panel of readers who read it and publish it, and I think that also makes it really amazing for students to say, oh, this isn't just, oh, send it in, you get published, and making students feel good. It really is a critical look at writing, and we're very proud of it.
Marie and Shelley, at this point, do you want me to launch that first poll so we can see who, in fact, kind of in the spirit of WeLearn, who's here, students, teachers?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, so everybody, I'm going to be launching this poll. So you should be able to see, are you a learner, a tutor, or teacher, an administrator, professional developer, other? All right, about 50% of the people have voted, about 60%. It's pretty much running, tutor and teacher is running away with it, and then there's a few professional developers and some others. Okay, I think I'll close it in just about a second. And while I'm saying that, as you guys were talking about confidence issues, Todd is saying that he has found that too. So I think, you're not alone in that perspective, in that experience. And Geraldine's pointing out that she's a lifelong learner as well, right? I think a lot of us really take that to heart, that we're all lifelong learners, right? All right, so
yes.
Most people have voted. So I'm going to share the results here. I think you might be able to see this on your screen. I'm not sure. It was 85% tutor, teacher, 5% professional developer, and 10% other. So this is unlike a WeLearn conference where, as Maria was saying, it's heavily populated by students as well, that this is much more of a traditional workshop than kind of a WeLearn workshop would be. Apropos of that, do you want me to launch the next one, which is about the confidence level that people have?
Yes, that would be great,
okay.
Eric.
Okay, so
and some of the reasons why we're doing these polls is not only does it give you guys input, it also gives me and Marie how we can kind of cater this to who's in the room. I have to say the last time me and Marie presented this, we presented it at conference, and we had a room full of all students. So it really is a different concept, and we actually, which if you get the newsletter, we actually published it in our newsletter that the students actually ended up at the end of the workshop writing a little short thing about conference.
So about half the people have voted, and so far it's coming in that people are generally fairly confident. Some people so-so, but nobody has reported being unconfident in any way, shape, or form. So perhaps this is
good.
Yes, that's good. That's good. I'm glad to see that everybody's so confident with their voting, with their writing.
All right, now you want to move on to the next slide, Eric?
Sure. I'll close that. So I'm going to close it. Pretty much. A couple people said that they're somewhat unconfident, but generally people are saying that they're pretty confident. Geraldine points out that she's very confident, but that came with time and practice, and that confidence really varies depending upon the nature of the assignment. right? And I think that's probably true for a lot of us, right? Depending upon what it is that we're being asked to write, our confidence level is going to change.
And as I mentioned before, that I am a student that has taken what I've learned and developed it into writing. But I know a lot of people, when somebody says, okay, write, all of a sudden the brain just goes, oops, and everything goes away. And that goes doubly for students that struggle with literacy, especially when you say put it down on paper. Because I have experienced it, I still experience it, even though my writing has gotten way more efficient than it was when I first started, is I have a brain freeze. And that is a huge challenge for students going forward, is their brain stops processing the information because all of a sudden they're concentrating on, oh, I've got to spell all the words right, I've got to do the grammar right, oh, somebody's going to read this and I can't do this. So that's why we developed this workshop, to give skills to students to how to move forward with that. And the other thing is writing is a slow process, and everyone needs to stress when we start out, grammar and spelling is not the issue. It's getting what's in your head onto the paper. You want to move to the next slide, Eric? Marie, did you have anything to add to that?
And that freezing of the brain, I talk to the students a lot. Is actually a physiological thing where your brain actually turns itself off. And I know that came up in one of the other NJOL workshops, talking about the brain and how our brain, when we get scared or frightened, how the brain stem actually has the power to shut off the blood flow to the rest of the brain. So it really is a physiological thing when people really get stuck. And I think as teachers, the job is really how to help them loosen up and relax and know that that blockage only will come when they relax.
So as you see on your screen, there's a beautiful sunset with a lake and a picture, and it's one of the ways that I have found can be easier to get people to start writing, because they have something they can see, and you could have them describe what's in the picture, talk about the rocks, what would their thoughts be. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do with this, and have it be a free write. Okay, just write down everything you see in the picture. It's a way to start getting the brain comfortable with just taking the information from the head and putting it on the paper. And at this point, nobody's going to read it except for the person writing it. So there's no need to worry about grammar, spelling, punctuation. It's just getting what's flowing in your head flowing on the piece of paper. Marie, do you want to tell about the different things that your class came up with when they saw this picture?
Well, I think we wanted to give people a chance to do it themselves, right?
Oh, right, that's true. Yes, sorry.
Yeah, so using that question box, when you see this picture, kind of what does it make you think of? So type in your ideas and I can read them out loud as they start to come in, so we can get a sense of what people are seeing and what they're thinking about when they see this photo. You know, and as Shelley was stressing, this is really about your ideas and not about the grammar and the spelling and that kind of stuff. And when I read your ideas out loud, people won't even know how you spell it. Russell says that's where he wants to spend the rest of his life. Debbie says My day is beginning with a new slate of opportunities. Ronald says, I see a lazy, laid-back sunset. Oh, Raquel comes from a different perspective. She says, being lost at sea, fear, solitude. Sarah says, makes her think of being on vacation. Roselle says, a day with the family fishing. Geraldine says, vacation, a holiday with loved ones. Erica says, a boat reminds me of sailing in New York. Todd says, vacation, warmth, leisure, privacy. If one of my sons was here, he would probably say it reminds him of, like, he's thinking about sharks. So I think it shows a nice wide range of, a nice wide range of responses.
And I think it's a really wonderful thing with writing, and what's different from writing from some of the other subjects that we teach in school is that it doesn't matter what you think, it's correct. I mean, my students went from drug smuggling in TJ to marriage propositions, and that's the beauty of it. Just because I think it's one thing, the wilder the better as far as writing goes, as long as you can stay focused and on task.
Last minute one, Kanchan said, beautiful and invigorating. I want to be there. And I think this is kind of the added benefit of this, right? Is that even though, as part of the process of writing, some students may share vocabulary that other students in the group may not know, right? And so if one of the students says something like beautiful and invigorating, you can spend a couple minutes talking about invigorating, kind of add it to the class's vocabulary. And that word might not have come up if you hadn't given them a chance to kind of respond to this type of prompt.
Right. I also talk about that sometimes it's the first few minutes, the weaker topics come up. You see the sand and the rocks in the ocean. Whereas as you start thinking, that's when the really amazing, different ideas come out, because you've been thinking about it for a little while.
I think that's a good point. Generally, that as teachers and tutors, we have to make sure that we give students enough time to really think through stuff and not just rush through the lessons because you've got an agenda or you've got a schedule. But, we need time to really think and give our brains time to kind of stew over things.
So, and usually I would be writing some of these things on the board, or we'll go around the room and people can share one of the things that they thought of from this brainstorm. Shelley, you ready for the next one?
I am, and I was just going to put in one point. Depending on what level your students are, brainstorming doesn't have to be done on paper. It can be done out loud, and somebody is the designated writer as well. But it's teaching the brain how to process.
Right. It becomes a think out loud, and then also how one word leads to the other, and how I always talk to people about that we steal fashion from each other all the time. We see someone with some nice shoes and we go, oh, where'd you get your shoes? And then we go buy those shoes, right? And with academics, we sort of say, don't cheat, and yet we really want to be feeding off other people's ideas. We don't want to plagiarize, that's for sure, but we really want to spin off the ideas that each person has.
Yeah, as you were saying that, Marie, Todd had typed in saying that he agrees that one of these group activities, it takes the pressure off students to be like the only person that has the idea for what they want to write about, and then you can have these shared and kind of ideas bouncing off each other. Geraldine also noted that the photo that you chose itself is really important, because if students have brain freeze or they're kind of nervous, to have a relaxing photo like this is a really nice way to start the class, as opposed to, I don't know, a photo of people dealing with Ebola or something like that, this gets people to relax into the activity. Do we want to move on to the next slide?
Yep. Yes, please.
Okay.
The next one is more about how you organize. So the center would be, you picked your topic. So if you can enter there, you picked your topic, and then then in the boxes around it, you put in all the different ideas that you can see that come up with and that you build from that. This is just one way to kind of do brainstorming, but it's definitely not the only way. Marie actually has another way that she likes to brainstorm.
On the next slide.
Yeah.
I personally, I like the bubble cluster map, but in the last few years, I've been using more of this T-shape that's kind of like Cornell Notes in a way. And we put the topic on the top, and then on the left-hand side, pick the 3 major things that we're going to talk about about the lake, because we're starting to think of, okay, you have to have the introduction, you have to have 3 things that you're going to talk about, and then you're going to have a conclusion, and the conclusion goes at the bottom. So once you have the 3 things that you're going to talk about, then I usually try and get the students to do 3 ideas about the rocks. So from the rocks, you have beautiful views, maybe you can see some birds that are sitting up there and see what kind of plants are up there. It could be something to do with me being a science teacher, but that's kind of what I come up with. And then when you start talking about the sunset, you start thinking more colorful, that it's relaxing, and it could even be romantic, unless you're smuggling drugs from TJ, and I guess that's romantic in its own way. And then finally, you have the boating, where you start feeling free and happy, and spend the day fishing. So it's a beautiful day on the lake in many different ways. Well, I had also talked to students about this, which of the 3 topics is the most important, because you always want the most important thing to be at the end. And I talk about, if you go to a movie, you don't want to have the best part of the movie in the first 5 minutes and then the rest of the 2 hours be a dead loss. So you really want to start the essays kind of slow and then really build it up to be something really memorable right at the end. And especially, I think we were also going to talk about that this essay is really formulaic, and it's really good for academic type papers, and to get students to start thinking about the American 5-paragraph essay. And that once they I tell them once they have all their papers and they become famous writers, then they can throw out all the rules. But for really academic work, they need to really be having paragraphs and outlines.
And just something from my own perspective, there's no wrong way to brainstorm or gather your ideas once you started the initial brainstorm. What I find helpful for me, and like I said, everybody's different, is I'll take my piece of paper that I've got written on my free write on, I'll take it down to my kitchen, I'll be cleaning my kitchen and processing information as I'm cleaning the kitchen, and then I'll start jotting down some of the stuff that's coming to my brain as I'm doing something else. So sometimes I find it better to kind of set that aside and let my brain process the information and brainstorm as I'm doing something else. And Marie, were you going to talk about the next slide about the learner versus?
Right. Yeah, we could go to the next slide. One of the things that I was born in Australia, and I came to the United States, and I'm now a citizen here. I've been here since 1981. But when I was in graduate school, I met a Brazilian lady, and we were writing papers and doing some group work, and she said to me, this American writing is just driving me crazy, because you have to keep saying what you're talking about. She said, in Brazil, we're not supposed to do that. We're supposed to take you on a path of learning and give you all the information so you can figure out for yourself what was this paper about. That if I'm a well-crafted writer, I can really explain to you what my side of the situation is. So I'm really trying and think about students. Some people are really super linear, whose outlines would be much more linear, and they don't like this cluster maps at all because it's all over the place. And then you have holistic writers that really need to see the whole thing before they start writing. They kind of have to have the whole map in their heads of what's happening with the writing before they can even go through it. So I think most people have heard of these, what I wrote on this slide, which was just that you introduce what you're going to talk about, you say it and give examples or reasons or details. This is the meat and potatoes of the essay right in the middle, and then summarize what you said. So you're really saying the same thing over and over again, just at the beginning briefly, and then you fill it in with the details, and then you remind people what you have just said. And that's a really foreign concept to many students, whether they're from the United States or whether they're from around the world. And it's really an academic way of thinking that we need to talk to people about. And often students will say, but I already said that. Why do I have to say it again? And it's like, well, this is why. And
I mean, I think as part of that conversation, we were always want to be pointing out that this is a very, as you're saying, this is a very particular type of writing. It doesn't mean that other types of writing aren't valuable or, or really, really helpful. But here's a very specific expectation when it comes to academic American writing styles.
Right.
Do you want to move on to the next slide?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Please.
Okay.
Okay. So how many of you guys have actually heard about using the hand as a way to represent a paragraph as well as a full essay?
You can raise your virtual hand to demonstrate that you've heard of the hand. I see one hand. I see two hands, three. Only about two or three or four,
Okay.
maybe.
Well, I didn't hear about this until I went to college. And I'm going like, okay, this is a new concept of learning how to write. And it's basically taking the hand. Your thumb represents the first sentence that's going to kind of describe it. Your next three sentences represents the sentences. And then the last one is your conclusion sentence. So we all know when you're writing, you have to talk about a lot of places call it the thesis statement is usually your first sentence. And then you've got kind of a little brief talking about the three different paragraphs you're going to have. And then you have your conclusion, which kind of wraps all that information up. Showing the students the hand gives them something they can take in or they can look at when they're thinking about writing their paragraphs that they can visually see. And a lot of students are kinesthetic learners, so it gives them that touchy-feely thing that a lot of students need. Eric, for time, let's go ahead and move on to the next sentence because we're about halfway through here. Now, granted, at this point, we're not looking at grammar. We're not looking at spelling. We're just looking at getting the ideas done. So the introduction, which is just is Julie is walking to the store. On her way to the store, she saw kids playing with a kite and stopped to watch. Thanks, Eric. Next one, yeah. And then the first sentence is describing the kite. So, okay, what was the kite? You know, color of the kite, and just describing the kite. And then all of this is on the way. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, the next one, please. Thanks, Eric. And then the second sentence is the kids are holding the kite, one is holding the string, and just you're building up what's going on with the kite. And then we'll move on to the third sentence is the kids holding the string and starting to run fast. The one kid lets the kite go and up the kite soars. And then we need to wrap that up again. And so we're going to bring that back into the conclusion. Now that I kind of done this, I'm just want to, and then we're just going to put it all, we put it all together, and all of a sudden you've got a paragraph. I'm just going to stop and ask and make sure there's no questions. Everybody's following along. We haven't just lost somebody. I'm just doing a touch base. It's so much easier to do this when you can see people's faces.
This is also something where you could move the paper around, let someone do the first sentence, and then pass it around the classroom so each student could write one of the sentences and then put it together. I've done that too in the classroom, where each person wrote one sentence of the paragraph and then we put the paragraph together, and we've written whole essays that way too, which was kind of fun because it took off in different directions where people didn't, people, in this case we had Julie walking to the store, and in the end she did all these other things that the first person didn't realize or
I think Geraldine wanted to chime in. Geraldine, I've unmuted you. Did you want to put some thoughts in?
Oh, well, I was just impressed with the things that Shelley had been saying about the thesis being very similar to the topic sentence of a paragraph. So the paragraphs are really like mini essays. So
Geraldine, could you, the next slide is a little promo for your workshop and what you would be doing with this. Could you talk to us about how you found that story sort of patriotic?
Patriotic, okay. Yes, well, I noticed that in the drawings too, after I had seen those, there was red, the background of course was white, and then there was the colors blue, the blue and white striped kite, and then the little boy, one of the little boys had a red hat, and so there was red, white, and blue, and I think in another paragraph later we're going to see a red bird. So I was seeing some of these things and thinking, okay, Julie made this choice to walk instead of drive. So what are some deeper underlying meanings that maybe hidden in the work itself? So in the Ready, Set, Right, Going Deeper, we're going to be looking for words and phrases that might help build up to a statement of significance and could clue in on a title, something like freedom of choice, something that would be obvious once you see it, but might not necessarily be obvious on the first look.
Okay, great.
So this workshop is really how do you really approach getting people to do that first work of getting something down on the paper and getting it a little bit organized so it kind of makes sense to people. And then the second stage really is for people going deeper. And I think that we do a lot of teaching reading to read, but I think there's a lot of research and a lot of information out there that students really improve their reading by writing. So their comprehension, if you can help them go deeper with their own writing, then it makes reading comprehension start to make sense to them. those abstract and concrete ideas that you put into the writing and appear in the reading and seem to be confusing to students, because they said, well, I read about this lady going to the store, and now you're telling me this is patriotic, so why did this, how did I come to that? So that's what the next webinar is sort of going through.
Okay. And I think apropos of what Geraldine was saying about the first sentence of the paragraph being like a mini thesis, I think that was the next point that you guys wanted to make, right? That you could use this to also think about larger structures.
Correct. Because most of your essay papers are, I know most of my college papers are done in this format. You know, I have the introduction. There's usually 3 things that we're either given we need to talk about, or 3 things we need to choose to talk about because of the our subject. And then you have to do the conclusion. But the introduction always comes first. And the difference between the introduction and the paragraph is this introduction would have a little bit of each of the 3, what your 3 topics are going to be. And your conclusion will also have each one of what your 3 topics are going to be, but it's going to have the it's going to wrap all the stuff up, so you're going to put all your powerful points in your conclusion. So you want to just move to the next one. Thanks, Eric. So same scenario. Julie decides to walk to the store. On her way to the store, she stops and watches 2 kids playing with a kite. She stops and watches birds feeding her young. She stops and talks to Jane about her new puppy. It took Julie longer to get to the store because of all her stops. You've just taken that same principle and you've taken it and wrapped it all up into your introduction. And then you have your 3 paragraphs. When your 3 paragraphs, one's going to be the kite. Well, we already wrote the kite one. The second paragraph's going to be the bird. And the third paragraph's going to be the puppy. And all paragraphs should be 3 to 5 sentences long. 3 is a bare minimum, very short. 5 is about perfect. So you have your first sentence that talks about your general topic, and then you've got your 3 sentences that talk about each sentence, and then you have your final sentence that talks about that just kind of wraps up everything up into one.
So we were going to ask the audience if they wanted to give us any ideas about what this was going to be about, what details that we could fill in. Do we have time for that, or are we moving on?
Well, we got 15 minutes, Marie.
Okay.
So yeah, it's getting we're going.
I would probably keep going. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So and then the conclusion, you need to put in everything you've talked about into the thing throughout the different paragraphs, and you need to put a little bit more about what you said. So it took Julie longer to get to the store than she planned, just because she stopped and watched the red bird feeding the worm to her babies. Kids playing with a blue and white kite. I can't even read. Jane told her the trick her new puppy could do. Julie was glad she walked to the store. The only thing that you have to make sure you do not do is you can't put anything in this conclusion that you haven't put into the paper itself. So if you haven't talked about a red bird, you wouldn't all of a sudden want to put the red bird feeding worms to her babies in the conclusion because you hadn't talked about that. So you're not going to introduce any new ideas in the conclusion. It's just wrapping it up so the reader gets all the main points. Now, as Marie was saying, this is academic papers. This is not writing a story. Nobody's going to tell you who murdered the person in a murder mystery in the first chapter. But this is definitely academic style papers. Any questions so far, or is this everybody?
I think you can move on to the next thing about the more general. Okay.
Writing takes time, and I like to describe this. We put boiling eggs, but a lot of times we'll describe this is like when you do Easter eggs. First you have to boil the eggs, and that's its own little step. And there's steps you have to do, or you won't be able to peel the eggs once you dye them. You have to boil them. You have to boil them for a certain length of time. Then you have to put them in cold water and let them sit for so long. And then you've got to pull them out of the cold water, and then you got to let them cool off before you even start getting to dyeing the egg. And then if you're going to use the crayon, you got to do the crayon first, and then you're ready to dye the egg. It's no different than writing. Writing is step by step. Up until the time you have the paper completely written and you're comfortable with the whole entire flow of the paper, that is when you start concentrating on, did I spell everything correctly? Is everything grammarly correct? Does it flow really well? So once you get all your ideas on paper and you have the outline, you've got it done, you've weeded out all the stuff that doesn't belong, you've added in stuff, that's when you start doing the actual editing on the paper for spelling, punctuation, and grammar.
Todd,
yeah,
okay. Todd had chimed in saying that one of the things that he sees is that students really need to learn that what you're talking about, these structures like paragraph and essays, take this time and thinking about the structure. And he says he feels like a lot of his students think that good writers just sit down and it just flows out of them, right? That it doesn't take planning, it doesn't take kind of like the organizational step, that it just comes out of, kind of flows from the top of their head. And so it's really helpful to point out that no, as a writer, when you're going in, just like if you're doing an egg, you're thinking about what the steps are. The egg, the egg just doesn't appear, right? You kind of have to go through that work.
Right, because, and he can even point out, no one would want to dye a raw Easter egg because it's not going to be stable enough to go through all the handling of by the time you hide it and the kid picks it up, and, so if you start off one, and nobody ever writes, even professional writers that write professionally have to go back and edit. Most of them even have people that go back and reread their work to verify that they didn't miss something.
Yeah, Erica chimed in saying that she tells students that the longer they plan, the faster the actual writing will be. I've heard some people variations of that, which is fast is slow, right? If you try to go too fast, you're going to end up having to redo a whole bunch of stuff, and it'll end up being slower. So if you can actually kind of take the time to plan, as Erica's suggesting, the actual writing is going to be much faster. And Ronald chimes in saying writers waste baskets full of discarded writing that the public never sees, right? That's part of the process. You write, you revise, you write, you revise.
Right. And no one is gold first time.
Right.
So you want to move on to him?
Sure.
Go ahead, Marie.
I was going to say the same thing. We've been talking about, and you'll know that that this writing was done by a student and it wasn't edited, and we did that on purpose. That we, and I know we've sort of talked this to death a little bit, but there does have to come a time in the process to revise and edit. One of the strategies to use to do that is called COPS. Where you check for capitalization, check for the organization, although hopefully you mostly did that, that you have taken care of punctuation and then the spelling. And I also teach students, especially if they're doing the high school equivalency tests, that when you're writing in the classroom on the spot, how to do some of the editing symbology, so that if they made a spelling mistake, they know it's a spelling, they can put the little SP, and then they can either try and spell it correctly or and go back and look at the work, but really get the meat of the work out before they start really doing the hard work with that. I also talk about, because as people transition to college, they're really looking at how do they edit on the computer with all those little green and red wiggly lines under their work, and what does that mean, and how does that help them? And also, how does it hurt it? Because if you've ever used, when automatic spell check happens and suddenly they're changing words on you, it can be really frustrating. So even with the computer helping you, you really still need to revise and edit, and a pair of human eyes is really useful.
Well, and I just want to point out, me as a student, I know for a fact when I'm writing, if I get too wrapped up with being concerned when I'm doing my first couple of drafts, if I get too concerned about the capitalization, the punctuation, and the spelling, I have a tendency to lose my train of thought, because I'm thinking about the word I'm trying to write, not what is coming out of my brain to go on the paper. And I've actually found that I have hurt myself by trying to concentrate on that spelling and the editing too soon, because it actually interrupts that flow process.
And with that, we wrote some tips down, which is don't wait till the last minute, especially you got to let the eggs cook. You can't really rush that. And give yourself plenty of time to process, and really for students and for yourself to understand, are you a person like Shelley? Like one of our teachers here in San Diego needs to do her ironing when she is processing, when she's got a really serious problem, she needs to iron. That some people need to be up around and active, and other people need to hide themselves somewhere away and be in a nice quiet spot. So really learn how each person has their own way of processing, but giving time to process. And also,
and I'm just going to put in one more thing there, Marie. Also, them knowing what type of learner they are really is a big key to this. So if you can spend some time getting, so they know, are they kinesthetic learner, are they audio learner, are they a visual learner? Because a lot of times how the person learns actually will make how they write different.
Right. I think when I started throughout high school, I was not much of a writer. I'm much more of a science math kind of geeky person. But when I started really writing, I often wrote my whole essay, and the last thing I wrote was the introduction. So you'll find that some students, I will get some essays and I've got an introduction and a conclusion with no middle. And then that student has to work on the middle, and then other people will write the middle, but they don't have the ends. And that's okay, because that's the process that comes naturally from them, and then as teachers we can really help them do the rest of the formatting, making sure all the pieces are there. So
I think that
Um,
point echoes, sorry, I think that point echoes what Todd was saying earlier about how some students think that the paper itself just flows out. And they have a hard time imagining that the introduction could be the last thing that you write, right? Because it's the first part of the paper. And
right, and
so,
the very last thing here, I talked to them about wedding dresses and suits. You you for a formal occasion, you do not want a run-of-the-mill thing. You really want a fit. And if you went into a hairdresser who spent 5 minutes combing your hair and asked for $50, you wouldn't be very happy. And so I usually say, well, you go into the hairdresser, you get up in the morning, you put your hat on, and you go to the hairdresser, and they make you look beautiful. And that's where the teacher's job is students come and they start working on it, and it's that fine tuning that happens with working with the teacher and then eventually backing off and backing off each time, so the students are able to write their own work and then start self-correcting. It's really been fabulous having Shelley as a student on the board of WeLearn, and she was very brave and became secretary. And she was like, well, I don't know how I'm going to be secretary, you know, that I can't read and write that well, but that's what she did. And over the years, she started off having her tutor help her a lot to get the minutes out, and then eventually backing off, and now here she is getting her associate's degree. So it really is that for students to understand that wrong is good. I also tell them that if they're wrong, that if they know everything, I'm out of a job, so they better be wrong some of the time so that I feel like I have purpose in life. Because a lot of students, you know, they want the A, they just want the perfect thing right away, and they feel like if they screwed anything up, anything at all, it's a very terrible thing, and then it stops the process because they're in a negative state of mind. So we really want to keep that dialogue opening and keep reminding the students that that writing is a process, and people help. You got
Right,
anything to add?
well, the only thing I was going to add is one of the big things that when I started writing and going, okay, I don't know how to spell that word, and my teacher, who was actually a teacher, was like, well, I don't know how to spell that either. We better go grab the dictionary. It really was a confidence builder for me, is that, oh, everybody uses the dictionary, not just people that can't spell. But I think stressing that no one writes perfect is the big key to this. And we've got a few more slides. I know we're getting up to the end of the hour, so I'm going to just say thank you, but we're going to continue on with our slides.
I didn't know quite how fast this would go, but I wanted to give you some resources. And I talked about at the beginning of the hour how the Women's Perspectives Call for Writing comes out, and we give some curriculum that goes with that. One of them is prompts. So in my classroom every day we'll have a prompt where the students write, and then we'll have a monthly essay. Another thing, yeah, the next slide is good. So those are just some questions we could ask. The second thing is to have quotes, and I have some teachers who every day come in, put a quote up, and then have a discussion and do a writing thing about that. So we'll give you some quotes. And all of these are about messages, because the topic for Women's Perspective this year is messages, and what are the messages that we see all around us.
and as participants today, I'm going to be sending you a certificate of attendance and also a copy of the PowerPoint. So the things that Shelley and Marie just went through, some of those prompts, I know you may not have had a chance to write them down, but you'll be getting the PowerPoint itself. And we're also going to be uploading an archived version of this.
So So that's just some of our contact information. We learn. You can contact us or email us at welearn@litwomen.org, or and then the last slide is just to remind that the next webinar is November 24th, the Going Deeper, and then you can find us on Facebook. Unfortunately, there's a lot of different groups called We Learn, so you can put in We Learn Women. I think the other thing is We Learn is focused on women, but we have many men who love their mothers and wives and girlfriends and women colleagues and also participate. And Eric's been a great person with working with us. And then on the web, we have our website. So
and for the women's perspectives, we actually take men's writings all the time. It just has to be more in the line with, associated with women and not from the man's point of view. And other than that, we're happy to take both men and women for our women's perspective. We've actually had some very good stories or articles put in by men that were taking it from a different perspective and giving a really good view on what women's thoughts were.
So just to remind people that this is East Coast time. So as it says that the next webinar is 2 to 3 East Coast time. Okay. So we'll say that on the email too. Okay. Erica says that writing picture prompts on Pinterest. So Pinterest has fun pictures, right? Because a lot of people upload fun things to Pinterest, so you can check those sort of sources out. We are right at pretty much at the top of the hour, so I'd like to thank Marie and Shelley for, I think, a really, really interesting and informative workshop. And hopefully we'll see everybody, see all of you here online for the second part of this. If there's people that that wanted to be here but they couldn't attend today, I'm hoping to have this up on NJOL's YouTube channel within a couple of days if I have a chance. We have all of our last year's webinars archived up there as well. I will be sending out the PowerPoints to you guys. As I said, next week we've got one about the Correctional Journal, and you get all. And now that we have your email, I'll be sending you information about the other upcoming NJOL webinars as well. One of the reasons that we're able to do this series is we always get the support of people who have really important things to say, like Marie and Shelley. And I'm very happy that, Shelley, as an adult learner herself, was able to participate in this. And I think, Shelley, you did a great job. I think it was your insight was really, really important today.
Thank you,
go ahead. Sorry, Shelley.
Oh, and I was just going to thank everybody for attending.
Erica had asked me to repeat. So this is the New Jersey Association for Lifelong Learning. So if you go on YouTube and you look up the New Jersey Association for Lifelong Learning and search for that, then you'll be able to click on through and see our YouTube channel. We got about maybe 10 or 11 webinars archived up there. And we're also hoping to have them archived on the We Learn webpage. We had one in the spring that was co-sponsored with We Learn that had the work of Jenny Horstman, and she was talking about, as Marie referenced, kind of the impact of trauma on learning, and that was a very, very interesting webinar, very, very informative. That's up online. Okay, so I hope to see everybody at future NJOL webinars, future NJOL We Learn webinars. Maybe we'll see you the next time there's a We Learn conference, and hopefully you'll contribute, or some of your learners will contribute to women's perspectives. I'll hang on for a couple minutes more in case there's any other last-minute questions, but thanks for everybody that chimed in too with your insights. And one of the things that I like about these NJOL webinars is people do get a chance to contribute, even if it's kind of via text, but it really feels like an interactive workshop, even though we're all online and not in a classroom together. All right, so if you're signing out, take care. Thanks everybody again, and we'll see you soon.